So I'm going to turn it on over to you. Tell us just a little bit about yourself, and then we'll jump right on into it.
Well, first of all, it's an honor to be part of the Libertarian Party. It's an honor to be on this segment with you. It's a show you're doing, and the education that you're giving to the whole party, I think, is wonderful. So I'm glad to be a piece of that for tonight. I will say to you that, I learned a lot of what I've been doing through my passion. And I'm the owner of Harmony by Karate. It's a martial arts school in Manhattan. I've had it for 26 years. And it's all the word harmony. It's all spiritually based with the philosophy and the deep breathing, all the good things you hear about martial arts. I've had it for a long time and I've been very blessed to be successful with that. I'm also the chairman of the Harmony Power Foundation, which is, the mission is stand up to bullying and stand for human equality, which you can see everything you see on the news about human equality and about bullying. It's like, but they go hand in hand, because when people bully, they tend to attack what they perceive to be human differences. So how that started, which is going to lead to what I'm doing with the party and my aspirations in becoming a congressman. Now, 2010, bullying in the United States was in the media a lot, watching what children were doing to each other and to themselves. And it started at Rutgers University when somebody took their own life. And that became like the door opening of like bullying. I was bullied severely as a child. And I was watching all this on the news and I'm thinking, I'm living a good life. I can't watch what's going on and do nothing about it. So at that time, I decided I needed to travel the United States. I need to go to different cities. And, you have to go into the schools, into the classrooms. You got to feel the energy of the space, the energy of the children, to understand, to get a glimpse of what's really happening. So after going on a 17-city tour over a period of a few years, why do children bully? They bully because they lack some level of self-belief. Therefore, they don't have that self-love. So they don't feel good about who they are. Hurt people hurt people. We hear that expression. And then they attack. So how can that be changed? Well, I happened to do a TV show with a guy named Deepak Chopra. And we did a TV show on bullying. Because what ended up happening with me traveling, I said, let me hire a publicist. And what I did was I got somebody that was not a high-level publicist. It was somebody that it was very cost-effective for me to utilize this person. And his focus was using local media. And I will tell you that local media is very powerful. People think that I got to go to CNN, I got to go to ABC. Those things happen. They happen organically. Obviously, you want to chase it, but it'll happen organically. What people have to realize is, number one, you have to have a great passion for something. So my passion was saving these kids' lives. And so I started to use this publicist, but I would guide him with my passion. And we started to target local newspapers, local television. And I traveled. I ended up with doing it that way on all the media outlets, Fox, CNN, NBC. I mean, my first campaign was in Chicago, and Telemundo shows up at a school, and then I'm on NBC that night. And I wasn't a known entity. It was like things just happened because it was like a buildup. But it came from being very clear on my vision and my intention and what I wanted. So that campaign lasted till now. I mean, I recently, in last November, we established the first mandated anti-bullying program in U.S. history in the city of Elizabeth, New Jersey. And I want to give you the history, and I want to get to a place where I can help every one of you, so you can understand how this relates to the party and how this relates to how we could expand our brand of who we are. So when I did this, it was basically, I came to the conclusion that, as I mentioned before, when kids bully, they are attacking human differences. They don't feel good about who they are. So the program was set up where it's the opposite. It's proactive. So it's recognizing the good that children do and giving them a blueprint within their school curriculum of the good things they can do using their gifts and talents and sharing with the community through art, through music, but positive messages, and that it would be done in high volume. This is what this city did. But understand, it was years of me introducing what was called Harmony Power. That's the program. And introducing it and spreading it. Finally, the mandate happened. Thousands of kids in a city are being transformed. And it's powerful. So then when I went to try to, it was recently, I was frustrated. And I was telling my wife, it's like my head hitting a wall with these politicians about expanding something that costs nothing to a city. And it transforms these kids. And it affects the teachers, because these kids get what's called a Harmony Power Award that goes in their report card as a permanent record. And the teachers get it and it goes in their evaluation. So, and it costs nothing. So why would that not be everywhere, right? It's about, and the Libertarian Party is all about teaching independence, where you don't need government. This is teaching independence, where kids don't need anything but themselves and just a little bit of support and guidance. And that city becomes like an amazing place. And over time, it could become like a utopia where it's commonplace for people to give with who they are, and that the knowledge is balanced with the love, and you need both. Anyway, so back to the medium, back to how I can help. I'm hoping to help each one of you, is that what I learned is that through the campaign, it started out with the Harmony by Karate National Anti-Bullying Campaign. And then it became the Harmony Power campaign. It's like I was transforming it. And really everything had to do with me wanting to help kids and staying focused on that piece, and keeping the message as simple as possible and being very passionate about it. So recently, when I joined the party and it was suggested that I run for Congress to the party, and now I'm running in the 10th district of New Jersey, I took the same idea. So let me take what I've done, right? So my passion is kids. So that's where my focus is, right? So you have to have a central focus in your campaign. What matters to you the most, right? So not necessarily what do you think people want to hear the most. This is what politicians do. What do they want to hear? Let me tell them what they want to hear, right? Which is very fake. It's not real. There's no substance. And most politicians really haven't done much of anything, but yet they're promising the world to everybody, which is leaving our country in the deficit that it's in because of lack of integrity on both sides, the Democrats and the Republicans. So I come in, I'm like, look, I've done something no politician has done. Bullying is the biggest crisis in America. In the state of New Jersey, it's gone up 26% last year. 26%. Imagine that. There is no future. Forget about the medical problems and the veterans problems and all. If we don't focus on children, there's no future in this country. That's what people don't get. Bullying is number one. That's how I see it. So when these kids believe in themselves, it transforms the whole community. Anyway, so I took that same passion with the kids, and in my campaign, it's number one, right? So then number two, I talk about healthcare and my views on healthcare. And then there's a number three. But the number one is what got me. It was last week, and it got me the biggest exposure, because what they did was I reached out to a writer, an editor, a local one. But this local person happened to have most of my district. Let me tell you, he took a liking to me immediately, because when I shared my story, I also have, I'm fortunate I have these gifts because I'm a martial artist. I'm also a break dancer. So I have a history of being at the Apollo Theater in Harlem. I do world records. I do these push-ups. I do different things to get attention to causes that I feel very important. So basically, I broke a world record after having the coronavirus. This all happened in the past few months. And I used that as a platform to talk about bullying and children and equality. That I'm for Black Lives Matter, the spirit of it, but I'm not for the violent aspect of it. I'm not for let's go attack police. Let's go destroy stores. I'm not for that. I'm like the way Martin Luther King or Gandhi thought of it. That's me. But they did an amazing story. It was like right in the heart of the district. And it was like a long spread. And they pulled in every video and everything I ever did. But all of that stuff started out with all local stuff. And then all of a sudden, then there's an ABC thing, and then there's an NBC thing, and there's a CNN thing. And that whole collab, all of that came together. So when I think about the party, each of you has something you're so passionate about. Each of you has something that you can connect to, something that you've done that relates to that passion. Each of you can connect it to something you've done for someone who really loves and respects you, who speak out for you. That's the place to come from, to share with local media. They need a story, and we have to give them that story. Because without a story, there's no campaign. We can't just get out there and talk about stuff we're going to do without having done anything. Because it's like shooting arrows in the dark, which most politicians do. And the reason why they're successful at it is because they have hundreds of millions of dollars to pump into their bullshit. But as libertarians, we can't come from that place. We have to come from the integrity that we promote, right? So we have these ideas we promote. We're very all about being real and being truthful and doing what's right. And we have a balance of some of the Republican belief system and some of the Democratic belief system. But like our belief system has to come out, but it has to come from what we've done. And taking that small thing we've done and showing the meaning behind it and how it can help everyone. And go local with that. And then watch that expand like that. That would be my suggestion to all of you, is to think about that. That's how you brand who you are. It's like each one of us is our own brand. The parties is the big brand, but we, each of us, has to speak for ourselves. At the end of the day, you know, they're going to say, who are you? What part are you from? Then they go back to who are you and what do you represent? And what are you going to do for my community? You know, the other thing I'll tell you, like the other passion I have, I mentioned there was a third thing that I'm involved in. It's in District 10, there's a lot of what's called opportunity zones. You know, if some of you don't know what that is, these are basically buildings that have been abandoned that, you know, if a businessman buys the building and wants to do a business in there, they get a tax break. They're trying to develop the community. So I'm involved in what's called vertical agriculture. And I've been working in Northern Philadelphia, you know, helping develop part of that city by Temple University and with their social infrastructure and bringing Harmony Power to that community. They're involving me with their vertical agriculture. So I'm meeting with somebody who's either the founder or the CEO, I'm not sure, but there's somebody at the top, because I want to bring that into Newark and Jersey City, into these areas, because I feel that that's going to be a powerful thing. You know, them growing their own food, for crying out loud. What can be more libertarian than that? Teaching independence, where they're not dependent on food, and then creating jobs for people coming out of prison or just creating jobs in the community and teaching them to sustain themselves. I believe that could be everywhere. But anyway, these are the things that I've done. It's like, I'm not even an expert on it, but yet I'm able to integrate that into my campaign because I'm actually doing something. I'm actually reaching out. I'm being active. Anyway, so those are some of my thoughts. I would love to hear if any of you have any of your thoughts to share.
So to kind of round out what you said, when you're looking at pitching a story to a local media, you know, whatever local media contact that is, you are looking at three elements to your pitch, which is the topic or, you know, that you're passionate about, or the policy initiative that you're passionate about, something specific that you did that relates to that passion, and then a person that you helped who is also willing to speak about your involvement with it.
Right.
And it's those three things together which make it an appealing pitch to local media.
Exactly. Because if it's not, it's got to be simple and powerful for them to even entertain it. Keeping in mind the high volume of inquiries that they get.
Right.
Now, the other thing too is to remember that when I reach out with absolute persistence. I remember I worked on Wall Street for a few months as a youngster. And I walked off the floor for the exact reason why these companies went undone, as it was selling to old ladies. But I learned something valuable on Wall Street. I would make 500 calls a day to get 3 leads, 1 to 3 leads. And I became a very valuable caller because I love talking to people. So if we take that idea and say, you know what, how many calls am I going to make today to promote me? Don't wait for anybody else to do it. You have to be you have to be your own spokesperson. Unless you have somebody who's great at it, wants to help you in your campaign, that's fine too. But I find that if you're out there speaking anyway, you're in the politics of that. You can sell yourself that way, the same way. But the persistence of the calls, old school phone calls, and the emails, and it has to be done like every week. You gotta harass them beyond, because what happens, it's kind of like an advertisement. They say you got to see it 7 times before it clicks. It's like the squeaky wheel gets the deal. That's my expression. Like if you are harassing them, you're going to get in the door. At least it'll be heard. And even if they say no, it doesn't necessarily mean no. It doesn't mean you can't follow up. Like the more you're just at people, because that's what they do. When the media wants a story, they go right at. They're like piranhas. They go right to this. They don't stop. So you can go right at them and give them a story and keep bothering them until they respond to you. I learned that that's the best thing to do. That's how I got this one. I called up the editor myself. I didn't know him. I didn't have a connection to the guy. I called him up and I gave them the story right there. Within 60 seconds, he was sold. He's like, please put it in an email and send it to me. And before you know it, it was this full-blown article. Like he spent 2 weeks and he was responding to me because he was excited. Because I was excited. So you have to be so excited about what you're doing and why what you're doing is going to have an impact in this world. That's important, because that passion and that enthusiasm is going to take you so far in whatever you're trying to do with this campaign.
Right, because if you're not excited, why should anyone else be excited?
That's right. And you're usually not. They're usually like overwhelmed. They
Yeah,
don't care less about what you have to say. They're like, whatever. But if
right.
you're excited and relentless, you'll get in the door.
And so I used to be in broadcast media, and we would get a lot of contacts. But the other thing is, we didn't have time. The other thing that I don't think people realize is that they simply don't have time. They have a few minutes, the assignments editor does, to just sort through things and say yes, no, yes, no, yes, no for what they're going to do. And they're doing it not just based on, is it a good story or not? They're basing it on, is this going to be a pain in the butt to try to put together or not? How much copy can I get out of this? Will this be a 2-minute package, or is it going to be a 1-minute VOSOT? What, how is this going to be? So there's a lot of things in that. So if you are contacting them and you are able to pitch your story and you are making it easy for them, right?
Okay.
Showing that you have those elements, you have a, like maybe a press release, or you have part of it written, or a little 1-sheet background written. If you do those things, you are far more likely that they will do, an article on you. I also liked what you were talking about in the, making sure you know who your brand is and making your passion part of your brand and having that to be, what do you represent? But when you're in politics, you have to have the other part of it, which you mentioned, which is, what will you do to make that person's life better?
Exactly. Very well said, Kara. And another thought comes to my mind too is that when you're out there and you're in the media and you're asked questions you don't know, it's best to say, I don't know. Because anything that's the opposite of what we see politicians do, when they don't know, they act like they know, and they're full of shit. It's like you can hear it. You're like, come on, you're not real. And we don't want to be that. We want to be with such authenticity, such integrity, and sticking to what we do know. And if I don't know, I just say, I'm going to research that. I'm always learning. Thank you for letting me. Or they might just tell you. The other thing too is that because I was on Fox, right? So if you're dealing with people who are attacking you, it's better than when they're asking questions, trying to put you down or trying to find something about you that's not good in some way. They tend to do that, the media. It's better to respond with questions back, right? So, or even if you're going against your opponent, rather than attack your opponent, question the things that they've done. Why did you do that? How did that help the people? Because when you ask the questions back, then they have to now vouch for who they are. It's better that way because the media is it's a crazy world. I could tell you that. I've been through so many experiences, but I love it because you could feel in your gut if the person is really for you when you sit next to them, and you can feel when they're out to get you. And either way, if you just stay calm and composed and you speak slowly when you're dealing with the media, you're more apt to say all the right things. And it'd be hard for them to corner you and make you look bad. Because that's a lot of fear that people might have. They're out there. You can never learn everything about everything. It's just, there's no way. And the goal of a lot of politicians is to sound smart. They come up with statistics and data and numbers and all that nonsense. I'm like, you're not going to remember all of that. It's like they can dance with all of that. If you stay focused on what you've done, what you can do, and get them to be clear on what they've actually really done and prove to you what they've done and what they can do. That's what I've learned in this process so far. But I'm just a beginner. This is the first time I've ever run for Congress or anything political.
Okay, so if you have questions, pop them into chat and we're going to get your questions answered. I do have a question for you, and that is, so when you talk about how you're calling media to pitch your stories, who do you pitch to? Meaning, is it just reporters for politics, or what job titles, or how do you find which reporters to pitch to?
It depends on what I'm trying to market. Like today, last week I was, had the whole Black Lives Matter, and then I got this thing published, and that was the beginning focus, and it became so many other things. This one, as I said, I wanted to support. I don't like anti-Semitism. It makes me sick, right? So that's troubling to me. And veterans definitely get a bad rap. I mean, I'm a veteran, and I can't even get medical support. It's pathetic, right? So if we believe in medical from the government, the veterans should be like the first on the line, but they're like kicked to the curb. So I wanted to do something to support that. So I just have conversations with people, and I was talking to someone, and they said, there's a statue in Jersey City, and it's actually a soldier holding a Holocaust survivor. And behind you can see the backdrop of New York. I'm like, that's amazing. So let me do like a world record thing by the statue. And then what I do is I contacted today a Jewish newspaper, right? I found that from a Jewish friend. They contact this paper. And then I reached out to the New York Post. I showed them the story I did last week. That was a big story. It's like you keep building. It's building blocks. You take everything you've done, you bring it into what you're doing, and that's where you know where you're going. But I'm creating the story. So I got this exciting story to share. And when I do the world record, it's a tribute to these two causes, which, it can be just my tribute to that, or it can be part of the political stage that I'm on, where I'm like, I'm for veterans. I'm doing everything I can to help veterans because they get, they're being kicked to the curb too much. There's so many that are homeless, and I could talk about the Jewish culture and that, yes, during Black Lives Matter, that has been a priority, and we know that, but there's something else going on. There's swastikas, or they're doing all these drawings at schools, and people are hating on the Jews, and that's very concerning to me, and that should matter. And that's why it's my tribute to stop that as well. Hatred to any group is very un-American. And, so that's how you come up with your stuff. Like, you got to come from your heart, not just what you think they want to hear, what you believe in.
Okay, so one of the questions is, if your most important topic to you doesn't seem to be a topic that generally appeals to the demographic in their area, do you still present that message, or should you change your topic?
Well, you could present it because you might find that there are people in the area that do gravitate to it, and you thought it was not so important, and you find that it actually is. Because if it's not your passion, you're not going to appeal. So they may not get you right away, right? But then they might. Like, think about this. I'm trying to market myself as a congressman, and it's 53% African American. Now, they don't know my history. They don't know that my first wife was Cuban. My kids are half Egyptian. I mean, I'm surrounded by diversity. They don't care. They're just looking at me, and they have a thought. Now, some may not care about my color, and others might. So I had one person attacking me saying, you're white and you're this. And he's telling me, you're white and he randomly, he's like, you must be in your 30s or 40s. And I was, look, I said, my skin, it may look white to you, but my soul has no color. And I'm 55. You didn't read the article. Please go read it. So it's like you deal with the crazy. But I'm still marketing myself to a demographic that they may not even want me in the door. Think about that. But I'm going to teach them that I love them and I'm coming in and I care about them. And I'm going to make more of a difference than the existing congressman they've had since 2012. Him and his father was from 1989. 30 years, father and son. What's wrong with that picture? I want to come in there for 2 to 4 years and be done, off to something else. So that's my agenda. So I'm basically bringing my agenda in, and it's like I performed at the Apollo Theater in Harlem. I did that 4 times. I came in with my agenda. They didn't want me in their theater. When I was done, at least half of them loved me. And they were screaming and standing ovation. So you have to think about what's your agenda. If you love it that much, you can't give a shit about what they're thinking. I hope you don't mind my words. But you have to be real. And you stick to that. And you may win people on board with your agenda. And that's more important than trying to become something that you're not, or becoming something that you think you want to appeal to them. That's my feeling.
Okay. Let's see. Do we have any other questions? Because we're starting to come up to the end of time, but I just want to make sure if there are any other questions, we can get those in for anybody. And I give it just another minute. I don't think we do. But you know, this was really good. I always try to come away from the different trainings with a couple, you know, at least a couple takeaways that are really concrete that I can take away from this one. And I got to tell you, putting that story pitch together of those 3 elements, that's a really big one. That's a really big one because you know, even though I worked in media, I wouldn't have put it together that way. But I can tell you, when I worked in media, and I was an assignments editor too for an ABC affiliate, if someone came to me and they had those 3 elements, something that they were, you know, like it was a topic that was timely, you know, and that they were passionate about, something that they had done concrete, and then another person that I could interview and talk to that had been impacted by it, I would assign that all day long. I would assign that to reporters all day long. Like, that's amazing right there. So your other tidbits were wonderful and I really appreciate it. But man, I can tell you, for everyone that was here, it was worth it to be here, even just for that little bit. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it. This was wonderful. I'm glad that you were able to do this. Thank you also for running for office, and to my other candidates that are running for office and helping with campaign teams. Really appreciate that. So thank you very much, John.
Oh, it's my pleasure, my honor. It's just so happy to be part of the party. And I just want to see everyone just thrive. That would bring me the most joy.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much, everyone. I do record these and I do upload these onto YouTube. And then I also, when I send out my every 2-week email to our candidates and campaign teams, I put all the links to the different trainings that we've had. So thank you very much, everyone. And I hope you guys have a wonderful evening.
Thank you so much. Have a great night, everybody.